You want to send to the finishing up the sixth parak. Before we know it. How long is it? All right, a week? Okay, so Tova Mitzlachet. It should be a good week. Okay. We're on Mem Gimel. We're on Mem Dalet and Aleph. 44a. Okay. Okay. Heviu lefanav miliach. They brought in front of him a miliach. We'll go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says if they brought in front of the person, remember the Mishnah says, heviu lefanav miliach tchila. They brought a salty food in front of the person. Upatimo. Mem dalet amanaf. 44. They brought in front of him the miliach, and then they brought in front of him after the miliach. They got the pot. They brought the bread. So what do we say? If the whole point of the bread is that the salty food that they ate was very salty, and they needed to go ahead and have some. And they needed to have some bread. Good morning, Shmuel. They needed to have some bread to dilute some of the sharpness of the salt by having the bread. So it says mevorach ala miliach. The Mishnah says you would make a bracha on the salty food, upoter the pot, and it would exempt the pot. You would not need to say a bracha on the bread. Shapat feilalo, because the bread is secondary to the salty food. So the Mishnah says a chidush that the idea when you have a food and you have a main food and you have a secondary food, and the whole point of the whole point when you're bringing the other food is not because you're eating the food because you want the food. You're only eating the food for some other. It's for some other purpose, totally not for itself. So the food is considered secondary and it's covered by the bracha of the other food. And therefore, when you said the bracha on the salty food, let's say it was shehakol, whatever the salty food was, it would cover the bread. Zeh klal. Kol shu ikah v'imo tefillah. When you have an ikah and a tafel, mevorach al ikah upotes tefillah. You make a bracha on the main item, and that will cover the secondary item. Good morning, Sammy. How are you? Yes. Morning.
Everybody's Torah. You're going to tell them so much Torah that they're giving their own classes.
Okay. Good morning, Sammy. So you should know this concept of ikar and tafel, that when you have a main item and you have a secondary item, that the main item covers the secondary item, is something that there's a lot of discussion in halakha to identify exactly how to apply this principle of ikar and tafel. And I have in front of me, there's a book called The Laws of Berachos. Okay, it's written by Benjamin Force. You sent to the group, right? And he has a whole chapter here about ikar and tafel. So first he says ikar and tafel refers to foods eaten in a combined form, when they're eaten together. The fact that they're eating together as one food requires one bracha. Now, this has nothing to do when you have two separate foods. When you have coffee and you have cake, they require two brachos. Coffee and cake are not two foods that came into that mixed into one food, right? Let's say you go ahead and you had an apple pie, or you had the apple pie. The apple is in the pie. It's two. It's the apple and the pie. It came together into one item. But coffee and cake coffee is one thing, cake is another. Even if you're going to say, but yeah, I'm eating the cake, but it's two, coffee and cake are not two foods combined to one. They are food, take care, they're food that are eaten together. So that's the first thing that when we see when two foods are not together, are not combined in one, that's the first principle that we say that might not be Ikka v'tafel. But we find in our Gemara, Ikka and tafel means you have the main, and you do one bracha. So when two foods are mixed together and they become one, they become two different foods become one, then we have the discussion of ikar and tafel, the main and the secondary, and that the bracha on the main ingredient will cover the other ingredient. So let's say you have cake. In the cake, there's sugar. So sugar by itself, let's say, would be a shakol. But now that you have the dough and the flour with the sugar, the dough ingredient is the main ingredient, and that will cover the what? You don't need a separate bracha on the sugar. So the first thing we need to know is that when we talk about ikar and tafel, the first thing is when two things are mixed together, that's where we're gonna get into the principle of ikar and tafel. But we see from our Mishnah that even if the two items are not mixed together, right? We could see that the rule of ikar and tafel could apply to two different items: the salty food and the bread. Correct, Yaron? Right, Shmuel Rav? The salty food, the salty food and the bread, they're two different items. So we also could sometimes apply the rule of ikar and tafel, the main item and the secondary item, to in a case when they're two separate items. So for sure, when the items come together as one group, when they unite, when two different foods become one mix, right? When you have multiple ingredients, or even if you have a fruit salad and you have multiple parts of that fruit salad, you have little pieces of grapes and little pieces of oranges and little pieces of pineapple, little pieces of honeydew. You have a mix of fruits. They're mixed together. Then you're going to talk about one bracha, ikar v'tafel, because they're mixed together. Now the question is, what's the majority of those fruits? So if the majority, usually if it's you would go after the majority, because that's what's probably you're interested in, the majority a lot, and therefore you would say that the majority of that fruit cup, if it's an eight, you'd say a bar pri eight. If it's a dama, you say bar pri dama. Now we mentioned yesterday this idea: if I take out a fruit from the fruit cup, or the question of the avocado. Remember yesterday, someone had the question: I take a piece of avocado out of the salad. The salad is when you have the avocado in the salad is hadama, right? What's the majority of a salad? Hadama. The avocado by itself, if you would just say, I only want to eat avocado, it's bar pri eights, correct? But if I'm having the avocado in the salad, it's part of the salad. It's then the bracha on the salad, it's eaten together as one. The hadama on the salad will cover the avocado. It seems that even if I would take out a piece of avocado from the salad and eat that piece separately, but I'm eating the salad and I happen to take out a piece of the avocado, many seem to say that it's still part of the salad. It's still botel, it's still tafel, it's still secondary to the salad, and I would not need a separate bracha on the avocado in such a case, which would be similarly if I have a fruit salad and most of the ingredients are of a certain type, and I want to pull out one of those ingredients. I want to pull out, let's say, a piece of grape from the fruit cocktail, and let's say it's mainly honeydew, which is hadama, cantaloupe is hadama, pineapple is hadama, and then I want to pull out a piece of a grape. It would seem that since I'm since it's really mainly hadama, because it's mainly the honeydew and all the things. So even if I would pull out the grape and I'm eating the grape, but since I'm eating it together, even though it's not in this In this spoon, I don't have the adama, but I'm eating the fruit salad. So even if I pull out have one particular piece from separate, it seems many would say it still will be covered. It's still part of the fruit salad. Good morning, Yosef Tzaddik.
Morning, Rabbi.
Morning. We're trying to discuss the halachot that the Mishnah introduces to us, ikar v'tofel, the idea of when you have a main food and a secondary food. I want to take out the Shulchan Aruch. I want to read today. We're going to focus on this. In the Shulchan Aruch, it says in Siman Reish Yud Beis, there's a siman, Ikar poteh hatafel, that the main food exempts, covers the secondary food. And when you say the bracha on the main food, it covers. For instance, technically, if you have cereal and milk, right? If you're having cereal and milk, do you need to say a bracha on the milk, or you just need to say the bracha on the cereal? So usually the point of the milk is just to get down the cereal, right? You're not having the milk as much for the milk itself. So therefore, when you have cereal and milk, most people will go ahead and say a bracha on the cereal, and they will not say a bracha on the milk, right? Many people, and they talk about it, I presume if you put in a lot of milk, morning Akiva, and you're interested, the reason why you're putting so much milk is you're interested in the drinking of the milk in the morning, and the milk is not there just to go ahead and help get down the food, the mizonot, the cereal, the Cheerios, but you put the milk in because you want the milk, so then maybe you would go ahead and say a separate bracha on the milk. I saw that, I think, let me see if I can find it over here. The way you eat it, what your intentions are, and so on, and so on and so forth. Exactly. So maybe we'll see. We'll look for this. Maybe a little later. 1 second. See if we can find it now. Maybe we'll wait to find this. Okay. Let's see. Let's see the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says, when you have an ikar, a main food, and you have a secondary, the bracha on the main will cover the secondary item. And also it would cover the bracha rishona and the bracha achrona. That means to say, if I have the mizonot, let's give the case of the cereal. Now, I don't put so much milk in the cereal. I'm only putting the milk in just to get down the cereal. So I had Cheerios. What's the bracha achrona for Cheerios, everybody? Ala mechya. That's the bracha achrona for Cheerios, correct? I had an ounce of Cheerios, I say ala mechya. Now, do I have to say a barina for sure because I also had milk in the cereals? No, because I was not eating the milk as a drink, because I was interested in the milk. I'm drinking the milk. I add the milk more to get down the cereal. I don't need to say a barina for sure on the milk, and I don't need to make a shakol on the milk, right? Unless, like we said, if you put a lot of milk in because you're interested in drinking the milk. So the Shulchan Aruch says that this rule of ikar and tafel is not only when they're mixed together. Let's say the cereal is mixed together, the Cheerios and the milk are united as one. They came together. Even ela afilu, the Shulchan Aruch says, if each one is by itself, that's the chidush, like we see from our Gemara. Our Gemara, we have, like he says, you have the salty food and the bread. And you're eating the salty food first. It's not that you made a sandwich of the salty food and the bread. You're eating the salty food first. And like the Gemara is going to, like we said yesterday, because you had these amazingly very sweet fruits first. And these sweet fruit first Tosfos says it affected you physically, and you needed to have a salty food afterwards, and then you needed the bread to help the taste of the salty food. So even though the bread came after the salty food, then and the reason why he says like you ate fish that was salty, and you ate bread because you didn't want it to hurt your throat. The salty food was hurting your throat. So in order that the salty food should not hurt your throat, you went ahead and you went ahead and had the bread, right? But so then he says you say a bracha on the fish, and you will not say a bracha on the bread in such a case, because the bread is secondary to the salty food. And the Berachos says, but if you eat herring, you know what herring is? Herring is like a small little piece of fish with bread. The bread is the main thing. You're just having the herring also. The herring helps you get down the bread, but really the bread and such a thing would be the main thing over there. So we see this concept that even if you eat two things separately, it would also be considered the rule of Ikar and Tafel would apply if the second item is secondary to the first item. So now the question would be if we could apply this to the case of that avocado question that was asked yesterday. When he takes the piece of the avocado out of the salad, so at that point it's eaten separately. But the piece of the avocado still, maybe we could say, is secondary. It's secondary to the rest of the salad. The main thing is the salad, and the avocado, while the avocado is inside the salad, right? Yosef Tzaddik, we're just going, the question, is it comparable or not? This is the question. Oh, so Yaron says you can't compare. Yaron wants to say first. First. I'm going to say what we want to compare. And we'll see what Yaron has to say. Beautiful idea. First, what I wanted to say, perhaps we could compare the two. That when the avocado was in the salad, the avocado was considered secondary to the salad. So now, when I pull out the avocado from the salad, it's still considered secondary to the salad because I'm still eating salad. And it happens to be, I'm eating a salad, I'm eating a piece of avocado. But the avocado is secondary to the salad. But Yaron wants to say, Rabbi, maybe it's not a good look. Why? I think Yaron wants to say, when I have the bread, after I had the salty food, the whole point of eating the bread is to support the salty food that I just ate. Because I need to eat something. I need to eat bread to help get down the salty food. Is that what you said? But when I eat the avocado, separate from the salad, is that what you're saying, Yaron, Chacham? You hear what I think? Then it's not called that piece of avocado is not really secondary to the salad. It's independent. Is that what you're saying? You hear what I'm saying? You hear what the Chacham Yaron is saying? Yes.
Even if it's separating the salad and the avocado next to each other, maybe the same thing.
Right.
Secondary, takes the avocado secondary on the side because you need to eat it. Even if it's not meat.
Right. So good. So we have to, so what we now right, the bread and the salty food are not together. And yet you right, they're not mixed, and yet you say that the bread does not require bracha. So what would you be if you go ahead, if you would eat if you would have an avocado, and the purpose of the avocado is to serve the salad? Is the avocado there to serve the salad, or the avocado is there as its own thing? What is the purpose of eating avocado? Now, by the way, I don't eat avocado. By the way, everybody. Sounds like I'm an avocado man. I don't eat avocado. With all due respect to the great avocado.
Rabbi,
Yes.
if I make a salad and I do it like a big pieces of salad of vegetables and I put avocado inside of it. And with one fork, I can take a good size of like an olive or more of a piece of avocado. I can say, Borei Pri Ha'etz, no?
If you you had a big piece of avocado, what you have? But the
Yeah,
question,
like I have like lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, avocado, but it's not mushed. It's like, you can still separate and can see the pieces because it's like bigger than the side, each piece.
right? So there's definitely the opinion of the Chaya Adam that says what you're saying, Yosef. If they're eaten, if they're recognizable, they're not mixed in a way. Each one is recognizable, and you're eating it in such a fashion. I think the Chaya, he would say you would make a separate bracha on each thing, but it's not clear to me that everybody would agree to that. So let's take a look at that. Good morning, Yosef. Yosef Tzaddik. Joseph, good morning. We have another Joseph on the screen here. Let's see what he says over here. It says here. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. He says. Let's see if we okay, so let's see that they're gonna bring this discussion, Yosef. So we're gonna go through a little bit here we're going through the laws of brachot of Ika and Tafel, of the main and the secondary. So the first thing we said, if you have two foods that are blended together, that in a one spoonful, when you take a spoon, you have both foods in that one spoon, right? Cheerios and milk. You take a spoon, you got the Cheerios and you got the milk. So therefore, the bracha on the Cheerios would cover the milk. The milk is secondary to the Cheerios. It's there to serve the Cheerios, to be able to get it down. You say one bracha. That's the first case, first application of this law. When you had two foods placed in one plate side by side, so then they are considered two separate foods, and you need to go ahead and say two separate brachot. You have, let's say you have a plate, you have meat on the plate. Right over here we got meat, and we got vegetable salad on the same plate. So they're two separate foods, the meat, and even though they're on the same plate, and even if you're going to go ahead, and then you go ahead and you make two separate brachos, one on the meat and one on the two separate foods. You reckon? Okay, so far you reckon, and the eating one is not coming. Each food over there is eaten for its own thing, its own taste. Not coming. I'm eating this because of that or that because of that. Each one I'm eating for itself. Now, even if I would take some of the meat and put it together with the salad on one fork, I took the meat, I took the fork, and I stuck it into the meat. I want to have a little meat and salad on the same spoon, but the meat and the salad, they were separate. They were not. It wasn't a salad mixed with little pieces of meat in the salad. That would be a different question. If I have salad, and the salad is mainly it have so much salad and small pieces of meat, I will go ahead and say one bracha on the salad, because the meat over there is insignificant. You see, like by cholent, everybody knows what cholent is, Ashkenaz thing called cholent. So what we do by cholent,
Chamin. We
what
call
you
it
say?
chamin.
Chamin.
We call it chamin.
Yes. So chamin. So on cholent, what we do is we make a mezonot on the barley, even though barley is not, it's small. It's not the majority is not barley. The majority might be potatoes and beans and meat. But since the barley is from the chameshet aminim, the barley comes from the 5 species of the 5 grains. we said that's not batel, that's not second, that's and there's a taste of the barley, you have to make a mezonot on the barley. But now you're gonna tell me, Rabbi, you made a bracha on the barley. What about the potatoes? But the potatoes are nice pieces of potatoes. They're very recognizable, and they're also we don't look at we make a separate bracha on the potatoes. We don't say that potatoes are secondary to the barley, and we also say a bracha on if you have pieces of meat, nice pieces of meat. That's very like what Yosef was talking about. If Yosef Hamon was talking about, I presume we'll have to see if it's the same case or not. But the meat is also not secondary to the. It's another ikar, and the meat is also a separate bracha. We make on cholent if the cholent is nice pieces of potatoes, nice pieces of meat. Barley, we would make 3 brachot on such a cholent. Usually, you eat cholent at a meal on Shabbat where you have bread, so the bread covers the cholent. But let's say let's say third on a kiddush where you didn't have a motzi. That's how we would say. We would say this. That's how we would do it. That's how I do it. I can't tell you everybody does it that way. That's how I do it. Now, then we have this concept. We have 2 foods. You could consider 2 foods ikav and tafel, even like we said, even if they're not mixed together. When one food is there only to help the other food. The main food is the ikav. For instance, you have vegetables with mayonnaise and dressing. So the fact that the dressing, you go ahead and you take the dressing and you go ahead and you dip it into the mayonnaise or whatever it is. And the point of the mayonnaise is, meaning you didn't make the vegetables with, you didn't mix the vegetables with the mayonnaise. You go ahead and they're separate. The mayonnaise is over here, the vegetables is over here. But the fact that you're going ahead and the whole point of the mayonnaise is to help you enjoy the vegetables or ketchup or that type of thing. So therefore, that will be considered one thing. And therefore, you say one bracha on the vegetables and it covers the dressing. And then he says, he talks about the fish and the bread, that if the bread is only eaten to take away the burning sensation of the salt, then we said that would be, you don't need to make a bracha on the bread, but that's not common to say. Usually we're eating bread because we want the bread for itself and so on and so forth. So in general cases, you'll make a motzi on bread. Now, let's see what else he says. He says, the ikka usually is, also so like Moshe Feinstein says, by the way, let's say you have an ice cream sandwich. Now, the sandwich has the ice cream sandwich has, what does it have? It has what do you call it? There's the mezonot part.
The cookie and the ice cream and dairy.
The wafer, and you have the ice cream. So Moshe Feinstein says, even though you have the rule that when you have something from the chameshet haminim, it's from the 5 species, that's the main thing. And you have to make a bracha from the grain, if it is from the 5 grains, wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye. Therefore, you will have to make a bracha unless we said if that ingredient is there, not for taste purposes, but just to hold the food together. So let's say, now we know the wafer of an ice cream is very flavored because you want to enjoy it. It's not just there to hold the ice cream. See, let's say if you would have, let's say, an ice cream cone, and the cone is very thin, extremely thin. And really, you're not eating the cone because you're interested in the ice cream cone. You want to be, it's like holding the ice cream. So then maybe you might only say a shako because the cone is not there to eat for the flavor of the cone. But many cones, they like to make the cones nice and thick and tasty. So therefore, you're interested in the cone. What kind of ice cream you want to buy? You want to buy ice cream on a cone? You go into an ice cream store, they offer you want ice cream in a cup or ice cream on a cone. So if you're taking ice cream on a cone, well, probably it's because you want the cone, right? Correct? Because you like the taste, I would think, and therefore I would say you make a mezonot on the cone and a shahakol on the ice cream. Even
Yeah, but
though
you have to do sha'akol first.
so they discuss. So that's a good question, Yosef. We have to see what they say because
Because
generally
you can't eat the cone before you eat the ice cream because the cone holding the ice cream. And if you eat the cone, all the ice cream will fall out.
no, but you make in the bottom of the cone, you make a bracha on a small piece of the bottom of the cone. And
Yeah, but if you take at the bottom of the cone, it's all leak in the middle. Rabbi, he apparently experienced with ice cream you don't have. I have 5 kids. I guide them how to do it ice cream. There is halakha for that.
but if you take a little piece, listen, also at the top of the cone, you cut off a little piece. Remember, you only need any amount of mezonot. You say a bracha on any amount, even a small amount. You say a bracha, you swallow, and then you can talk. So you don't need to have a large piece of the cone in order to say a bracha rishonah. In order to say a bracha achronah, you have to have eaten an ounce of the cone. But to say a bracha before you eat anything, it's any amount. So if you cut off Yosef Tzaddik, you cut off a little bit of the cone, and you say a mezonot, wherever part of the cone you recommend to cut off that piece of the cone. So then you could say the mezonot first. And the general rule is when you have mezonot and sha'akol, you first say a mezonot, and then you say a what? Say a what? Sha'akol. Okay? So now, he says generally the ikar. So now Rav Moshe Feinstein says you can't say that the ice cream is tofel. He says the ice cream is not secondary to the wafer or the very delicious cone. The ice cream is also an ikar. There's something called, you have multiple ikarim, multiple things that are the main food. It's the ice cream is the main food, and the what? The cone or the wafer is the main food. Therefore, you would say 2 brachot. Generally, the ikar is the food which is the one that you want. The secondary food is there to serve, to help, to enhance the main food. So he says, let's say, if you have a yogurt, he says, and they add fruit is added to flavor the yogurt. The yogurt, he said, is the main thing, right? When you put a little bit of, they put a little bit of fruit to the yogurt, he says, there the yogurt is the main thing. Right. You just why do you put the fruit in the yogurt? Because it's like the milk in the cereal.
Yeah, but you can't take the cereal remove as it.
So then you can't what?
You can't remove the meat from the spoon.
You can't remove what from the
The
spoon?
meat,
The milk.
you do the bracha only on the cereal first. But the yogurt is a mix, so it's sticky. So it's better.
Okay. Now he continues. Then he talks about fruit cocktail, which we spoke about earlier. Let's see what else he says. See, he talks about the cholent, like we said. He says the barley, the beans, the potatoes. See, he says, he said like this. If the pieces of potato are large and eaten separately, then hadama is required. Like when I eat cholent, I have the barley and then I have a piece of potato. The potatoes are not little pieces of potato; they're nice sized pieces. To make a separate bracha on the potatoes, and the same thing would be for the meat. If the meat is a nice sized piece, you make a separate bracha. Now,
so Rabbi, even after the blessing for the bread, like on Shabbat, you would say the blessings for the barley and meat and potato.
No, because the barley, the bread covers all the foods during the meal. Bread is the king, and bread is called the ikar, and all the foods that you have during the meal are secondary to bread. And therefore, you will not need, when you say hamotzi, you don't need to go ahead and say a bracha on the cholent, because the bread is the king. But the bread is only king if you're going to eat a kazayit of bread. If you eat 1 ounce of bread of challah, but if you're not going to eat 1 ounce of challah, if you're only going to say eat less than an ounce of challah, which is, first of all, then you will not have, then the hamotzi will not cover all the foods of the meal. So you have to make sure you tell you when Joseph, when you get married, and we have marrieds on the screen and here live, got to make sure your wife eats a slice of challah, an ounce of challah, because or else she's going to need to say a bracha on every food that she has during the meal. When you eat an amount of challah that's a kazayid, then it will cover all the food they have during the meal. It will not cover the fruit that you have, dessert. It will not cover the wine, unless, that's why you need to go ahead and say, if you taste from the kiddush, it covers the wine. But hamotzi does not cover the wine that you have during the meal. It's the wine they have before the meal by the kiddush, which cover the wine during the meal. Is that clear?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. If we go, all the best. One second. Take no. For the trip. That's thank you very much. That's everything good.
Sorry to go.
No. Thank you for everything. I don't know for being here. Thank you. Then he talks about breaded flounder or cutlets, right? That's a big question. When you soak small slices of fish or meat in eggs coated with matzah meal from frying, right? Why you go ahead, anyone eating fish, now he says like this. The question is, what bracha do you make on flounder that's breaded flounder or cutlets that's breaded? So some say that since it's that you're eating it, if you want the flavor of that coating, then you should make them his own oat. And that seems to he says like this. Some authorities rule that in the extreme case that the matzah meal cannot be considered the ikar. Some say this, the fish is considered the ikar and the shackle should be recited. Let's see what he says. See, some want to say that because of the rule of if you have from the chameshet haminim, if you have from the 5 species part of the food, then it does not become batel. Think of it from the 5 grains, and that breaded flounder has in it mizonot. So therefore, some want to say you should say a mizonot. Others say that the fish is the main thing, and you should say a shako. Some say that the grain that you have is insignificant. So it's a big question. What do you do on let's say, I feel like I would say fish sticks, right? They're breaded, or chicken cutlets that are breaded. They have that coating on the outside, right? So there's a whole discussion. What's the proper bracha? Is the bracha mizonot? Is the bracha shahakol for fish sticks? Is the bracha because of the coating of mizonot that's on the item? It creates a question. Is it really there just to hold the food? I mean, or is it there for some other purpose, as also to serve it, to give it some taste? So that would be part of the discussion. Like, the grain is the main thing if its function is to enhance the flavor. So therefore, if it's used for other purposes, not to enhance the flavor, if the mizonot, that's the flour that's inside, is just to hold it together, then you would not say a bracha of mizonot on the item. He gives examples. Gefilte fish. Gefilte fish is prepared with matzah meal. But the point is that the matzah meal is added to hold the loaf together, not to enhance the taste of the fish. Therefore, on gefilte fish, you say a shahako. And he talks about cheesecake. Now, cheesecake, when you have these very, you have these cheesecakes where if you have a very thin layer of bottom, of crust on the bottom, and the whole point of that thin layer, good morning, is to hold the cheesecake, the cheese together. So then you would only say a shakol. But usually the cheesecake has a nice crust. Nice. It's not just like a paper crust, a very thin crust. A lot of times, and they make that crust very tasty. And the point of the cheesecake is not just to have the cheesecake. You also want not just the cheese part. You're also interested in the cake part of the cheesecake. So therefore they say, if it's a thin bottom crust that's only serving to hold the cheese together, then you would only say a shakol, because it's not serving for the taste. But if the crust is added anytime there's a mezonot, even if it's the minority ingredient, but if it's from the 5 species, wheat, barley, oats, and rye, and the purpose of that mezonot ingredient is to add flavor, and then you would say a mezonot, and on such and such a thing. He says, in reality, on the bottom, the crust adds to the flavor of the cake. And he says, it is difficult to imagine that the crust is added only to hold the cheese. Cheesecake is normally eaten with a spoon. Thus, the crust serves no purpose whatsoever, unless it's made easy to serve. Rabbi Yashiv, that one recites mezonos on cheesecake. What's the bracha on cheesecake? Mezonos. Now, if you want, have some cheesecake and also make a mezonot on the crust and take a shakol, take the drink and say a shakol on the drink and have in mind the cheese part if you want to avoid such a thing.
Like a waffle, have a certain little bit like flour type. You're not gonna do a lamita for it, right? Because you cannot eat enough light of flour within 4 minutes, right?
Right.
But you're still going to have a little bit of flour.
And the flour is there for the purpose of taste. As long as the flour is there for if the flour is there just to hold something, to give it, to hold it, that the thing shouldn't fall apart, then you would not say a bracha on mezonot. To know what's the purpose of the flour, then you say that. But right, exactly. The taste, you say mezonot, but if it's there just to hold it together, you will not say it. Yeah, but technically you could eat it. Now the waffles has a nice taste to it also. Yeah, but do they make it tasty also? Do they put it sugary? Do they make it, or they make it that it should be some also enjoyable?
I don't think flour gives the structure, the way it's formed. It puts it together for the most part.
You have to know if it's there for taste or just to hold it together. That's really the question.
Like even in pizza,
So let's say you have pizza. The pizza, you have the mezonot, the dough. You're not just interested in cheese. If you're interested in cheese, you just go and buy cheese. You have pizza because you want the dough. So therefore, the mezonot is, even if you make a very thin dough, but the purpose of the dough is because you want the dough. And therefore, you go ahead and you would say, okay, but again, it's not. But if it's also serving a purpose of taste, like we gave the example, you have a cheesecake. You can make it, or let's say an ice cream cone. You can make, there used to be these very plastic, these certain cheap ice cream cones that are not, that are just there to hold. It's like paper thin ice cream cones. So then you will not maybe just say a bracha on the ice cream because you're not interested in the cone. But any of these sugar cones, these tasty cones, then they're there for the cone itself.
So that's why
Okay, very good. It's always good to try to avoid the question and make a mazona or something else if you're not sure if the thing is there for its taste or is there for some other purpose. It's always you have a drink of water or something. Okay, have a great day, everybody. Good to see everybody. We'll be back tomorrow. So it's I think we got our feet wet in this discussion of Ikka v'Tafel, main and secondary. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Now you'll be thinking a lot more when